So the 5 main chord shapes on guitar: C, A, G, E, and D, make up something called the caged system. The idea being that you can find any major chord on guitar in 5 different places. We've got those 5 different shapes, but from those shapes we can use the other shapes to produce the same chord. That's the idea of it. So C, I could play as a A shape at 3rd fret. I could play as a G shape with the bar at 5th. And then I can play an E shape with the bar at 8. And then the D shape, lastly, at 10. If I go up another one, I get back to where I started. Like that. So I could play a G, for example, with an E shape at 3rd. They sound basically the same. Then I can do a D shape at 5. Then I can do a C shape at 10. And then an A shape at 10. Ooh. Now, when you get up to here, fitting those 3 fingers in with your A shape is problematic, especially with my Dorset fingers here being quite fat and short. So instead, I could use one finger just to go across those 3 strings there, or my last finger. But what you should do is mute the first string by lifting your finger ever so slightly off. So you've got the finger pressed down here, and then it just lifts up for this string here, so that you end up with this. That extra note can be used if it's a 6 chord, G6, but you want G major, like that. Notice that I'm also muting the 6th string, because you want the bottom note of your chord to be the main note, the tonic as it's known. So in a G chord, you'd want the G at the bottom. You don't want the D. Just sounds a bit wrong at the bottom end there. Like that. And then the D shape. The D shape is a little bit more restricting because you can only play 4 strings. So it's one of those things that you can do for sort of rhythm parts. That Soul Man riff, you know, it's in G. So you've actually got a D shape here, just the last 3 strings. That's a passing chord. And then an E shape, but only the last 3 strings there. So that would be the whole thing if you were going to play it like that, but actually the riff. So now the G shape is a bit of a handful if you're trying to bar it. So for example, if I'm trying to bar a B, make a B chord, it would be a G shape with the bar at 4th fret. But it's a bit of a fistful and it's hard to change around, especially when you've got your bar there. So the other thing you can do is you can take some of those notes away to make the shape easier. However, you have to mute those strings. So here's the full version of B major, which is a G shape at 4th fret. Now, I could take my bar finger that I had across here and just cover the 2nd, 3rd and 4th strings. The first string, by the way, is the thinnest one. It's not this one. The strings are numbered 1 to 6 from bottom to top. So you're muting the first string, playing 2, 3 and 4, muting 5 with the tip of your index finger and putting your last finger on the 6th string. So you end up with this. Because a chord only has 3 different notes in, actually it doesn't matter that you've taken some of these other ones away, and actually it sounds a bit better. We have 3 notes in the chord, but 2 of them are the 3rd note in the chord, da, 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 where that is the main note. Now, this harks back to Mr. Bach, who said, don't double the 3rd in a major chord. And it just doesn't sound very good. So by doing this, not only are you making a chord shape easier, but you're also observing the rules of Mr. Bach. It's also, with this, easier to play Rolling Stones stuff without having a second guitar or having to detune or having to take this string off and lower that one and that one, having to retune all the time. So you can do this. Now all I've done there is I've got my G shape, and then I add my other two fingers like so. So middle finger on the second string and then annular finger on the fourth string. So you can get that sort of sound. There is actually one note missing at the top, but it's good enough, especially if you're on a gig and you're playing lots of things. If you want to get that Stone sound, you can do it that way. So there is an introduction to the caged system. Now, if I have a chord sequence, let's say A, D, B, E. I could do it, it's not too far to move, but you can do it with only one fret movement. This means it's great if you're reading lyrics or you're communicating or you're having to MD or you're having to do whatever. You don't want to be looking at the guitar neck all the time. So you could do this. So really, I'm in the same area instead of having to move like that. Now, there are disadvantages to it. It's, you know, you're having to change the shape all the time, whereas you're just keeping the same shape and just going between frets. If you're a rhythm guitarist and you're not having to read lyrics or whatever, that might be easier. But to have a knowledge of where all of those chords are, so if you have a chord like F, where are you going to put that? F is there. Or it could be a D shape, like that. Or it could be a C shape, an A shape, and you could have a G shape up here. So if you need to find F quickly, usually you won't need to move very far to find it. Now, this doesn't cover minor chords. However, there's a relationship between a major chord and a minor chord. Each major chord or key has something called the relative minor, which shares many of the same notes and characteristics. For example, C and A minor. Now, this means that you could technically have C and A minor like that. There's A minor 7. C and A minor 7 are exactly the same. So you're just changing the bass note, but the other notes above are the same. So if you're faced with an A minor and you've got to find that quickly, you could find a C chord. There's your A in the bass. Or C, which is 3rd fret at with an A shape. And you could just put your bass note either there or use an open string. But if you have any A-shaped chord, you can find its relative minor by just putting that finger over the top onto the 6th string, same fret, and just either keeping that note or muting it. So D minor would be an F chord. D minor, and F. You can get the minor chord and then change to a C shape and you get the relative major. There are all sorts of ways of storing up this as information, as a grid in your mind to think, where's F, where's D minor? It's just, you learn by doing with this. So pick a chord sequence and see how many different ways you can play it. So for example, the A, D, B, E there, I could go A, which is a G shape at 2nd, D, which is a C shape at 2nd, B, which is A shape at second, and then D shape at second. So it's like having a capo on. Now, this is a way of getting all of these chords without needing to capo. However, things like the Beatles, that Here Comes the Sun, it starts to become difficult if you're having to hold the bar there. That's the reason why you have a capo, so that you can get all this freedom with those high notes without having to worry about the bar. But generally speaking, if you're just trying to get through something and there's lots of chords flashing their way out of an iPad or whatever, if you can find things in lots of different places, it starts to become effortless to essentially move around the guitar fretboard. And this also gives rise to different ways of improvising, which is something that you can see on another one of my videos, where you can play minor pentatonic or major pentatonic in lots of different places. And it's all related to this, the caged system. So there we go. Have fun.